This is Philly Talk with Philly Mike. Talking Sixers in the Bird Gang, that's our life. Competition, we ain't scared, yeah, that's what we like. Win or lose, you know we showing up and we gon' fight. You see we strive for the sky every day that go by. And every single week we screaming fly, Eagles fly. This is Philly Talk with Philly Mike, yeah. This is Philly Talk with Philly Mike, yeah.
What is going on, everybody? I go by Philly Mike, host of the Philly Talk podcast, and today we got a special guest, Mark Farzy from the Farzy Show. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike. How you doing, man? Excited to be on with you. You do great stuff.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So it's been a interesting offseason, to say the least. When you just think of where the Eagles ended and some of the moves they make, like, well, what is the first thing that pops in your mind overall?
Jalen Hurts. I mean, it always goes to quarterback, the most important position in all of Philadelphia, all sports, really, but particularly in Philadelphia. You're always thinking about Jalen Hurts and the quarterback and what the quarterback can do to improve. And then right after that, it kind of goes to the defense with Jonathan Gannon and what kind of scheme, if there is going to be a scheme next year, how they're going to bolster this defense through the draft. They've already done it with a great acquisition in Hassan Reddick. They made some other acquisitions as well. But when it comes to the major acquisitions of the offseason, it's all going to go through the draft. So I think quarterback, and then I also think about what this defense is going to do in Jonathan Gannon's second year as their defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and also second-year defensive players like guys like Milton Williams, who you told me backstage we'll have on the show tomorrow. Yeah. Is that correct?
Tomorrow morning, new episode drops as it does every morning, 6 a.m. for the live show, and then the content is available for consumption throughout the rest of the day. And I thought Milton Williams had a very good, solid rookie season for a third-round pick. A guy definitely showed a lot of upside, which is all you can ask when you're talking about a third-round defensive tackle playing behind the likes of Javon Hargrave, for instance, and Fletcher Cox. So, and then the Eagles, I think, are going to bolster that spot as well in the draft. But I thought he showed a lot of promise in his rookie year.
Yeah, and you're talking about a guy who played inside and outside, a guy who didn't get many reps, and somehow he had the same sack total as Derek Barnett. Hey, guys, who's tuning in for the live recording and tuning in for the to watch after, make sure you go check that out on the Farzy Show on YouTube. Search it in the search bar, subscribe, and check out the Milton Williams interview. He's a cool kid, according to this guy right here. You know what I mean?
No, he is real chill, man. Real chill. Talks about how he gets free food in Philadelphia because he's a member of the Eagles. So, that's always fun. But yeah, he was really cool. A lot of fun to talk to. And you talk about the numbers with this guy. I didn't even realize. I mean, I knew he had a decent rookie season. Like I said, okay, he showed you some upside, some decent flashes, whatever. I didn't realize that Josh Sweat was the only defensive lineman that had more passes deflected than he did. Josh Sweat had 4 throughout the season. Milton Williams had 2. And then when it came to tackles for loss, he was 5th on the team despite playing less than 50% of the snaps. So that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, you definitely can't go wrong off a season like that, especially when we're trying to get younger at that D-line position. We brought back Fletch for another year, but it looks like this will be the final year unless something crazy happens. But you brought up Jalen Hurts, and that is where most of the topics slide, right? You heard the headlines when there was other quarterbacks out there that could possibly come to the Eagles. Now that everything simmered down, we heard Jeff Lurie talk yesterday, and he didn't really just go out on he didn't just answer a question of Jalen Hurts, but when asked about the franchise quarterback, as he did the air quotes, he explained that other quarterbacks in the NFL who are now playing at a franchise level didn't start that way. He also talked about that he wants the top pass and attack. He also wants a good running attack. Of course, you want to have the best team. But he talked about the qualities Jalen has, the improvement he thinks he's going to get, and the fact that he took us to the playoffs at such a young age. Do you believe that the organization is buying into him for the long term, or definitely buying into him for this year?
I think they're okay with him for this year, and I think they're rooting for him for the future. I think it's kind of a compliment in a way if they're going to replace you with a guy like Russell Wilson. If that's the guy they want to go after, if they're considering Aaron Rodgers, if Aaron Rodgers became available, they were waiting in the wings for that. Obviously, it didn't come to fruition. But if those are the guys that are thinking about replacing you and you're only going to be, a second-year starter in the NFL, that's kind of a compliment to say, oh, wow, those are the guys they think they can replace me with. If they draft a quarterback, which now after hearing Jeffrey Lurie's comments yesterday, as you alluded to, I don't think they're necessarily going to go that direction. I'd still be a little bit surprised if they did. I think they look at Jalen Hurts as a guy that is Mr. Right now that they want to see develop into Mr. Right, as in the franchise quarterback. I thought throughout his rookie season, he showed you the work ethic. He showed you that he definitely has a good command of the huddle. Those are things you look for. Look like you belong, basically, in his rookie year. Then this past season, when he came in, was his first year as the regular starting quarterback, came in with the starter reins. There was still all the talk about Deshaun Watson in the offseason and all that stuff. He just said, I'm above that, and I'm going to keep on pushing forward and I'm going to control what I can control. That's the mindset I think you want in every single athlete that plays in your city, and I think the Eagles recognize that. I am not going to bet against Jalen Hurts because I think he overall has talent, which is the most important thing. I think he's got improved on his accuracy. I rank his accuracy as a far bigger problem than his arm strength. And I know everyone wants to talk about arm strength, but I think the accuracy is something he needs to improve upon. I think he realizes that. And then I think when it comes to overall mindset and work ethic, I'm not going to bet against the guy that has his work ethic, has his mindset, and he's already working out with Tom House in the offseason to try to improve his mechanics and also try to improve what he, that on that accuracy that I mentioned a second ago. I think that when we talk about mental health in this day and age, I think one of the things we should also do is talk about the people that seem like they're on mental steroids. And this guy, Jalen Hurts, seems like he is one of those guys where he is just all the talk around him, all the noise. Forget about it. I am just going to rise above it, and I'm going to work on my game and making sure I'm the best possible quarterback when I am the starter in the upcoming season.
Yeah, and we've seen the Baker Mayfields crumble under the couple weeks of pressure. That even a long-term veteran like Matt Ryan, didn't make no issues about leaving ATL until they got into the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. So, mental steroids, as you said, is something that Jalen Hurts definitely possesses. And I think it's going to get him to at least, show more development. I don't know if it's enough to really back him because he's going to be coming up in his contract. I'm a supporter for sure. I definitely see the deficiencies. I agree with you. I don't think it's as much arm strength as, accuracy, but more importantly, just playing on rhythm with the offense, right? Like he don't got the flick of the wrist, the cannon. So if he's going to stand at the 20 and throw it as far as he can throw it far. But it's how fast can he get the ball out on time with the offense? When you have to take a second, gather your feet to make your feet line up with your upper body and then throw it, that's a lot of time in the NFL. The guys like Allen and Mahomes can just flick the wrist. So it's not about how far it can go. It's how far you can get it to go in a short period of time. And I think that's where, he has to play on time and he has to get better at that. He wasn't asked to do that at Alabama or Oklahoma, but you did see increase of passing accuracy and attempts from Alabama to Oklahoma. So he's gotten better incrementally. I know a lot of people want to say his draft profile said, leaves the pocket early, misses on some, doesn't throw slants, and we're seeing that, but he still showed improvement at every level. Just, he's 23 years old.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think that if you're looking to maybe go the other way and say, no, he's definitely not the guy, it's not a good thing when the offense says the best version of us is less of you. So when they become a run-first team, as they kind of did in the second half of the season, especially they started to go on that nice run, you kind of felt like, all right, well, they're asking Jalen Hurts to do less as far as being a prototypical quarterback goes. Yes, he relied on his athleticism times where he maybe should have been able to step up in the pocket, climb the pocket, and make a throw. But we saw flashes of him being able to do that. The first half against the Denver Broncos is probably the best case example of that, where he read what was in front of him, took what the defense gave him, delivered a couple of different accurate throws down the football field to guys like Devontae Smith who made plays for him, trusted his wide receivers, had instances where he climbed the pocket, and then took what the defense was giving him, as I said a second ago. So that was all stuff that I saw as maturity as the season went on. The trick now for Nick Sirianni is going to be finding that perfect blend with Jalen Hurts, his running ability, his athleticism, and the overall team's running ability, not just with Miles Sanders and how great he can be and how talented he is, but how good this offensive line is as well. Find that balance for Jalen Hurts where you can coach to his strengths while still throwing the football. Make that a strength. That's on Jalen Hurts this offseason to go into this year, letting Nick Sirianni trust him and his arm to make the right decision, as you said, and also deliver the football accurately when he makes that decision.
Yeah, I agree. And, you could still be a predominantly heavy run team, but still be able to sling the rock when you throw it. Like if you're throwing the ball 27 times, but completing 21 of them, you could still have the yardage to back up what you say. Because there are teams that are balanced. We know this is going to a heavier passing league, and you got the quarterbacks that, have 48 attempts, 50 attempts, and they complete 39 of them. But I think that Jalen Hurts has to work on his downfield, be able to maximize everything, because when you're only doing stuff, 15 to 20 yards ahead of you, the defense can play that way. Todd Bowles, saying that he can't read defenses, it was more that, he's not going to take that deep shot. But let me ask you about his skill positions around him, like the Devontae Smith, the Quez Watkins, the Jalen Reagors, and now Zach Pascal. How do you feel about year 2 for them and the addition to Zach Pascal? Is it enough, or do you think one of them draft picks have to go wide receiver?
I don't think they go wide receiver. And I think Howie Roseman taking 2 wide receivers in the first round, even though the one didn't work out in Jalen Reagor, I think the one is going to work out with Devontae Smith. And I think most of that is going to fall on Jalen Hurts' shoulders. But I don't think they go wide receiver. I think they do go defense. I think they take 2 defensive players in the first round of this draft. And then I think they flip that 19th overall pick to next year, so they have an insurance policy for Jalen Hurts if Jalen Hurts ends up not being the guy. Like if he does not progress, instead he regresses, you're going to need yourself a quarterback, and you'd rather have 2 first-round picks to have some flexibility that way than just 1 first-round pick. So with the draft capital they have now, I think they hedge their bets a little bit and move into next year, so they have at least those 2 first-round picks. I don't think they go wide receiver. I'd like them to go defense, because I think defensively you need the biggest uptick. I think you'll get enough of an uptick from a guy like Devontae Smith, especially if Jalen Hurts improves. I think a guy like Pascal coming in here could bring you a lot of good things when it comes to offensively speaking. His size, his decent speed, not great, but I think he'll give you enough where he gives you a little bit more of that size. And I think Quez Watkins is ready for a big leap. I don't expect anything from Jalen Reagor. I think offensively speaking, this is going to come down to the overall improvement of Jalen Hurts, then being able to show off through that improvement what Devontae Smith can do, because one of the great things about Devontae Smith isn't the deep ball that we all fall in love with. It's his ability to get open on those short routes. But if your quarterback isn't completing those short routes and is highly inaccurate in those short routes, then Devontae Smith isn't showing off what he can do. I go back to that Denver game. If Devontae Smith can do that in that particular game, he could do that throughout the rest of the season. It's a matter of giving them those opportunities, and ultimately those opportunities won't come just by Nick Sirianni saying, let me get this guy the football. It's got to come from the quarterback being able to make that decision and be accurate in delivering the football. If he's able to do that, oh, man, we're going to see. And look how good Devontae Smith was last year in those limited throws. Did he have a huge breakout season that we could say, oh, yeah, this was the slam dunk like a guy like DK Metcalf his rookie year? No, the numbers weren't eye-popping, but if you watched him through 17 games this season, you saw just how talented he is. You saw those proverbial flashes that we saw from him throughout the year, where if you give him more opportunities to do that, he will take full advantage of those opportunities. But it's going to come down to play calling, Jalen Hurts, and then Devontae Smith taking advantage of those. The other thing is we always forget about Dallas Goedert. He had a rough year last year in terms of drops. He had his first year of being the guy with Zach Ertz was eventually moved on from. I think he's going to have a huge year. I think one of the big breakout years we're going to see in the upcoming season is going to be from Dallas Goedert. So I think between Goddard, I think between Devontae Smith, maybe another offensive weapon, maybe a running back later in the draft, I think you're going to see this offense do some good things, especially behind the great curve that is that offensive line. You can do a lot of things with this offense if your offensive line continues to dominate the way that they have. So I think that this offense is going to do some great things in the upcoming season.
Yeah. For the whole since the playoff loss, I was definitely on the side of, would I necessarily be mad if they went receiver? No, just because I think this wide receiver this draft for wide receivers really deep and talented. I was also, asking for maybe one later in the draft.
Sure.
However, I really thought that the Eagles were going to be a buyer to one of these veteran guys, the DJ Chalks, the Allen Robinson, even though he's a little more expensive,
Juju.
but somebody from a Juju Smith-Schuster to even a Landry at one time, to get Zach Pascal, I think he fits that mold of that third guy, maybe fourth. But we're really still missing that second. I love Quez Watkins, and I was actually on him prior to the draft just as a deep sleeper once I saw him run that 40, coming second to Henry Ruggs. But I think he fits better as the 3. He might be able to one time grow into the second role, but I think, I do agree. Dallas Goedert is going to be featured a lot. You saw Jalen Hurts really connect with him late down the season, and that's really where Dallas Goedert got his starts. The drops, the easy drops, right? If it's a tough catch, Dallas catches it. If it's an easy catch,
right,
he looks to, overthink it. He had the probably weirdest interception of the year when he dropped it and he played soccer, kicked it back up to the Washington football team, I believe it was.
Yeah.
The Commanders.
Yeah. First play of the game.
Yeah. You can't make this stuff up.
No, it was insane. Yeah, it was pretty insane. Hopefully those things don't happen again. Like I haven't seen that, so hopefully I don't see it again. We'll just go with that. But that's what I'm talking about when you talk about, like you said, you're talking about the spectacular catches. Jalen Hurts is there, or excuse me, Dallas Goedert is there to make those catches. But when it comes to those little out routes, just above the flat, that's a drop. Like for whatever reason, it falls in that category. But hey, man. 20 yards down the field, over his head, he leaps up and gets it every single time. But those easy ones, look it into the hands, friend. Look it into the hands.
Looking into the hands. Staying real quick with the draft, you believe you said hedge one of your first round picks for next year. That was something I talked about as well too. You're looking to 19, right? You don't think they'll hedge any of the earlier ones. You think they'll hedge 19 if they did.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a chance that there's another trade that they either trade back and they package maybe 15 or 16. I doubt that, but there's always a chance that they move up with a later round pick, or they use a later round pick, package it with 16 and move that on to next year to maybe get a higher pick. Like there's all sorts of possibilities. I would say I'm about 85 to 90% sure they only move 19 and keep 15 and 16.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. And as much as I've been saying that, and I think you got to, because there is still, for even me, even for guys like me who believe in Jalen Hurts, I still seen the flaws, and you do not know. And without a quarterback, it makes it hard to win. The next quarterback draft is better, right? The Strouds, the Bryce Youngs. But here's the thing, and I haven't yet to talk about this. I wanted to do it closer to the draft. I'm thinking, as I sit back and think all the time, I'm like, okay, so we do get 2 first-round picks, right? But if we're in that, Jalen Hurts wasn't the best, wasn't the worst, but you clearly see the exact same struggles. You're going to be that, 7, 8, 9, 10, 8, 7, 6, 5 to 8 win team, right? Because the NFC East ain't that good, and Dallas is just Dallas.
Sure.
With that being said, these teams in the top 5 are probably in the top 5 because they need a quarterback, right? Maybe the Lions are ready to move on for golf. The Falcons don't do good, and they got the bridge quarterback Mariota. So, no matter how much ammunition we got, it's going to be hard for a team inside the top 5 to say, okay, we'll take your 2 first-round picks and take that franchise guy if that's what they're there to draft. So I think although you do have ammunition to possibly do it, but you still might be getting the 3rd or 4th best quarterback, especially if it's a quarterback draft. Nobody's really worried about these quarterbacks because they're thinking some of these guys can slip to the 15, 16, right? But if you're in a draft where, 3 guys go 1, 2, and 3, the teams that are locked in there, they're not really trying to move for whatever package you get. Like we were able to get Carson Wentz because the Browns are the Browns. they just the Browns are the Browns. You know what I mean?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, I'll never forget Podesta coming out and saying that Carson Wentz isn't a top 20 quarterback. And you know what? He's been right about that more often than he's been wrong about that. But the one time he was wrong about that, the Eagles happen to go on and win a Super Bowl as Carson Wentz guided them through the first 13 games of the season. And then Nick Foles said, all right, fella, I'll take it from here. But yeah, things like that can happen every single year. So if you're saying that it's difficult for the Eagles to maybe make a trade to next year for one of those teams that might be looking for that franchise guy next year in the draft, yes, that will be difficult. But I do always go back to the idea that the Eagles and the Rams were out of first place contention or out of first pick contention. The Eagles, of course, as we all remember, went from 13 to 8 to 2 to go get Carson Wentz. And if that can happen, anything can happen, especially when it comes to Howie, which if you're talking about the strong suit of Howie Roseman, the reason he still has a job, it's trades, it's willing and dealing behind the scenes. It's not exactly talent evaluation. But if you're looking to anybody to make some type of deal to make a splash, it would be Howie Roseman.
Yeah. And hopefully we hedge our bet. We get two guys in this draft that's good. And Jalen Hurts does what, at least most of Eagle Nation believes he can. It's a fine line.
Right.
At the end of the day, we all want the Eagles to be successful. That's our ultimate goal. I try to tell
Sure.
everybody that's where we want to get to. Sometimes you got to agree to disagree. We'll pat whoever's on the back, whoever's right when we figure that out. Exactly.
I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you right now. I never agree to disagree. I am way too stubborn. I'm if I'm wrong, I just go, oh, you have a good point. I never go agree to disagree. That has never been my MO. But when it comes to this particular quarterback, I do find it funny that a lot of Eagles fans, I think a lot of Eagles fans are in a similar realm that I am in terms of you really like the guy, you're really rooting for the guy. You always hope that the quarterback of the future is already on your roster, right? But I'm not going to give him a 10-year contract right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like him and everything, and I think I'm really optimistic on him, but it's not like I'm looking at him going, oh, franchise guy, wouldn't trade him for anything, no matter what, 10 years guaranteed, $300 million, whatever. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, I want to be clear. And I think a lot of people are on that same wavelength, like, still under evaluation.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. I mean, even the most avid Jalen Hurts fans are at that area. They believe it, but they want to see it. There's nobody that I know will say he's a lock to just take the reins and run with it. They all have their concerns, but they all do see part of the upside that can be conquered if things go right.
Sure.
How do you feel about John Gannon's system and getting a guy like Hassan Reddick, right? We know he's on the roster as a linebacker. He was drafted to Arizona as more of a linebacker. The last year of Arizona and the first year in Carolina, he got to rush the passer more. He had 23.5 sacks. How do you think the Eagles use him under Jonathan Gannon's system?
I think now people, when I say this name, people are going to go, oh God, but this is how they have to use him. And they need to use him more frequently. And he's a far better player than this player I'm about to mention. We saw Jannard Avery in a role of like edge setter, especially when Brandon Graham went down. Yeah. I think Hassan Reddick goes into that role a lot more often and a lot more successful, setting the edge, rushing the quarterback, and dropping back into coverage. So I think you see all of that from him. I think mostly you're going to see him as that outside edge rusher in a lot of those instances. But I think you're even more so actually going to see him as a linebacker, which I think a lot of people are saying is hard to believe. But I think you'll see him in that Avery role for a lot more snaps than you saw Jannard Avery, and rightfully so. But I give Hassan Reddick a lot of credit for this. When he was asked in his introductory press conference here in Philadelphia when he came to the Eagles, they said, hey, what's the best way to use you? And I always love that question because usually from a player, you'll get honesty. You're not going to get, oh, well, I'm not really familiar with the system yet. Let me figure it out. No, here's how you best use me. I'm a football player. Let me go play football. That tells me about diversity. And if Jonathan Gannon wants to talk about his own scheme as if he really doesn't have one, but he has an overall philosophy, well, then your overall philosophy should be let your playmaker make plays. Like, do you think, and I'm not saying he's on this level, but I'm saying he's a good football player. He's good enough where you can think about this. Do you think in Dallas, they're looking at a guy like Micah Parsons and they're being like, you know what, we'll try to wedge him into this hole. No, they're saying go play football. Tell Hassan Reddick to go play football. Give him the opportunity to go play football. Don't scheme something up that holds him back like you made, like you did through the first half of the season with Fletcher Cox before he called you out on it. And then you guys had a conversation and you saw a much better Fletcher Cox after that situation, talking about the game in Las Vegas against the Raiders. Yep. Hassan Reddick coming in from jump. You just light the fire. Just wind him up and let him go. Let him drop back into coverage to make a play. Let him get after the quarterback on a 3rd and long situation to try to get that, try to get off the field. Let him know, let the opposing quarterback know that he's out there lurking, looking to make a play. If Jonathan Gannon is true to the overall, I don't have a scheme idea, more of a philosophy idea, the philosophy starts with Hassan Reddick.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And when you hear Jannard Avery, you're like, Jannard Avery, but we're talking about his role. And when he was used as the edge setter and the guy who has the free reign to go get the quarterback, even a Jannard Avery at sometimes looked good in that position because how the other members of the defensive line took up space, right? The Hargraves, the Fletch, even the Josh Sweat and whatnot. So if Avery looks good on certain rush plays, Hassan Reddick's going to look even better. Sure. And I think, we're going to maximize his talent and I'm looking to, get double-digit sacks from him. I like the contract he took too. I think it was a somewhat of a discount compared. I think he's the. I lost it. I did find out how he was he's in the teens or in the double digits of highest paid edge, not edge rushers necessarily because he's a linebacker.
Outside linebacker, yeah.
But for what he's done in the last 2 seasons, I think he could have knocked on someone else's door, but coming home, Camden, New Jersey native, Temple, I think it's going to be a perfect fit.
I'll tell you this right now. Jonathan Gannon's going to have an idiot test this year, okay? Because here's the idiot test. And I'm being somewhat sarcastic when I say this, but in all honesty, who do you think knows Hassan Reddick the best? Do you think it might be his former college coach, Matt Rule? Do you think Matt Rule has a good idea, at least Temple, being so familiar with Temple, being so familiar with Hassan Reddick? Do you think Matt Rule has a good idea of how to best use Hassan Reddick? I think he does. And I think only an idiot would ignore that and say, no. I know how to use Hassan Reddick better. If we see his numbers go down compared to what we have seen, especially behind this defensive line with Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, hopefully another up year from Milton Williams, whoever else they bring in, Josh Sweat, who I thought had a really solid year last season, and all that. If they don't
forget Derek Barnett.
And God forbid. Derek Barnett gets a flag, and then Hassan Reddick comes in and resets it because he gets a tackle for a loss, whatever. But if Jonathan Gannon doesn't look at Matt Rule and say, okay, how did you use him, and not use him in a very similar way, then Jonathan Gannon does not pass the idiot test. Congratulations, you're an idiot. Like that shouldn't be the way it goes. I'm hoping he looks at the film, sees how they used him in Carolina, see how they used him his last year in Arizona, and says, okay, this is how I can use this guy. Don't square peg, round hole this. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. Pass the idiot test, please, Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah, that was my exact. I didn't go to idiot test, but I just said, he doesn't. He don't got to be in Philly anymore if he can't use him. Especially when you saw Arizona draft him, use them wrong, and then find out the last year of his deal to how to use him right. And then, like you said, Matt Rule, knowing what he knows from him, used him perfect. I think he still had his, best year. I think he had one more sack in Arizona, but he was just a problem, a matchup problem for Carolina, especially early when they were really good and they were healthy. And you were looking at that front four and saying, wow, look what they're getting done, led by Hassan Reddick.
Right.
So I'm excited for that. So you said 2 defensive players in the draft, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 15, right? We don't know who's all going to be on the board. And,
Sure.
You can kind of guess, I think this guy's a top 10, so he won't be there. But, CD Lamb was not supposed to be at 17 for the stinking Cowboys. He happened to be there. But if you had to guess, 2 guys you think the Eagles will eye if they're there and that might be there, where would you go with them with two guys?
I think they don't go linebacker with the first one, but I think they go linebacker with the second one. So I think they double down on the linebacker spot. I think they actually bring in another linebacker. Derek Singletary Jr. is a guy that I think. Not Derek. That's he's the LSU kid, the quarterback. Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis out of Georgia is a defensive lineman. I think they go with him first and foremost, and then after that, I think they go with Devin Lloyd, who is a linebacker out of LSU. Or out of Utah. Those are the 2 guys that I think jump off the page. Like, if they're staying in that 15, 16, middle of the first round range, I think those are 2 guys that they go after to bolster their defense. That's the 2 guys that I'm rooting for. If you're asking me to actually bet money on who they're going to be drafting, it's weird to me. I can't see Howie not draft an offensive lineman in the first round. Like, of these picks, I think they go 1 defense. If you're asking me for the prediction, not what I want, the prediction is they take an offensive lineman. What I want is for them to go linebacker, and I want them to go defensive line as well.
Yeah, and with Tyler Linderbaum slowly dropping, like I see him dropping right to where the Eagles are going to be. Right?
Okay.
And I mean, I'm not really for it. He's talented, and at the end of the day, if you bolster up the offensive line, I might complain at the time, but this is what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the sexiest pick, but it is, a staple of the Eagles. You heard even Lurie say we're going to continue. Andy Reid installed that on us, and we got to live by it. Defensive line, offensive line.
There's 2 things that we got from the earlier eras: the Joe Banner philosophy of linebackers don't matter, and the Andy Reid philosophy of always take care of the trenches, especially offensive line. Those are 2 things that don't evade the Eagles, even in the very, even those 2 personalities being gone.
Yeah, and that's why when you first said it, it makes more sense now. You saying what you would want is Jordan Davis,
Right,
and I
right.
definitely think if he's there, that's a guy the Eagles are looking at. We only get 30 interviews to certain college people, and I think we used it on Davis, Wyatt, and then Ahmad Gardner, right, with the corner out of Cincinnati.
Mhm.
We're definitely showing our interest in defense, and with Fletch getting up in age, Hargrave, I don't know how many years he has left. D tackle is something that you're gonna have to really look at, especially
Mhm.
if you end up, flexing Milton Williams out. He's a smaller guy. He can play a little bit of both, but I think I don't quote me on this, but I thought I looked it up that most of his the 2 sacks he did have was from the outside, I believe. Not like I said, don't quote me on that.
I'll take your word for it. Your word is gospel.
Yeah, right. But it's been since the 70s since we drafted a linebacker in the first round.
Yeah.
Again, last year was the first year I think how he really stuck by the BPA, right? Best player available.
Right.
Landon Dickerson had a first round grade, but there was injury scare there. He took him in a second. I like it overall. He's a monster of a man.
And no ill effects. Like by the way,
Correct.
I talked to him before the season, and I was talking to him about, injuries and the cartwheels he did at the pro day and everything. And he's like, I know everyone wants to talk about injuries, but I feel almost like I got my injuries out of the way. And like, what are you going to say to that guy? Like, that's not how it works. Like, no, if that's his mindset, that's his mindset. But he said, basically, I feel like I got the injuries out of the way. And I also feel like I'm 100%. Now, he got some reps early in the season, training camp that kind of held him back a little bit. Then they released the beast. I think he's a very talented player. I didn't think last year they would have moved him to center at all if anything happened to Jason Kelce, because he had a couple of injury scares throughout some games, always made it back. But Landon Dickerson was a guy that they might put in that spot. I think they just love him, though, at the guard spot. I think they love him at right or left guard for the foreseeable future. And I really like what he can bring to the table here in Philadelphia. Dickerson was Driscoll's a guy they have a lot of confidence in as well. I think they got some decent young offensive linemen, and they got to fill that spot that's left behind without Brandon Brooks. But I feel like they got enough guys like that are ready, but I feel like they want to have more to add to that fray as well.
Yeah. And, talking about the draft prior and stuff on my channel, and I'm really going to jump into it heavily this whole month of April. I was arguing prior to getting Kaiser White from the Chargers and of course Hassan Reddick that one reason I could see the Eagles, getting off the never draft a linebacker ever in the first round was because they're starting to make, their way back, and they're starting to be not the heavy guys like the Brian Urlachers or the Ray Lewis. They're starting to be more thinner, more of a hybrid, right? So they're
safeties.
Play side to side. Yeah,
they're free safeties now. Yeah,
yeah. And when you see Micah Parsons change the complexion of Dallas Cowboys right in front of you, I think that was going to be enough to push him to probably do that. And the fact that he went BPA last year, and if we're sitting at 15 and 16, and if Lloyd is on the board, he might just be the best player available. Like if you're just talking about a skill set wise. And so I thought that could be the case, but now, even though Reddick's going to be more of the pass rushing linebacker, bringing Kaiser White, who, former safety, pretty decent in coverage, I'm starting to be like, well, it's really hard for me to see them do that. Unless, like you said, you're talking about Devin Lloyd's there, and then the next one is, to their board, a heavy drop off. But I think it's a must to go 2 defensive players.
I think they need to. And yeah, it's a shame. Like the 2 positions that I think defined football are just not around anymore. I mean, fullback, it feels like just what's a fullback? Like no one knows. And then you talk about the middle linebacker, like there's no Jeremiah Trotter anymore. There's certainly no Bill Berge anymore. There's nobody like that anymore. These guys are all like if Brian Dawkins played today, he'd be a linebacker. Like that's what he's more built like a linebacker of today than anything else. And Jim Johnson, toward the latter stages of his career here in Philadelphia with Brian Dawkins, that's how he used Brian Dawkins as like another linebacker. So that's more of what the position has been bred into now. So when I look at these other guys coming in here, they're more of the slender guys. They're not the big, bulky guys that you look at and think, oh, that's what you would put on a movie poster about football. It's these different, quicker, more agile type guys that you have manning the linebacker position. And what I think is the linebacker position should be even more important. Like the build of a linebacker has changed, and I get that. That's just how things evolved. but the importance of the position in a pass-happy league that the NFL is now, why wouldn't you want somebody that's so versatile that could go from getting after the quarterback to dropping back in coverage? Like, why wouldn't you want that? I don't understand how you could devalue that. Like, even if you just change the name of the position of linebacker to, I don't know, like, just general defender, I don't know, midfield defender, make it a soccer term for all I care. Like, that position would be highly valuable, I think. And yet the Eagles don't really look at it much, at least not through history, going, that's somebody we need to have. We just need somebody who's serviceable. And that's been really their MO for the last 20 years.
Yeah. And sometimes they were able to get away with it via stopping the run because their D-line was so dominant.
Yeah.
So these linebackers are not having to clean up a lot of these, missed gaps by the defensive line and whatnot. But as the defensive line gets a little worse, you start to really expose your linebackers. And I think Gannon's system in general puts the linebackers out there on an island, and we got to see some of the stuff. I think TJ Edwards is a pretty decent piece. If he has linebackers to the left or right of him, I think he could be solid. I think early in his career, it was the injuries that kept him off the field. I think he's decent, but we still need to upgrade that position.
Sure.
Now, of course, the Eagles have more than just a couple holes. But what is your take on the Eagles eventually filling the cornerback spot, like getting some secondary help? And do you see them not going at all, like not even later in the draft to wide receiver?
Later in the draft, I would think wide receiver, but it's interesting. Zach McPherson was a guy that won the Mr. Training Camp award. Like, it used to be Mr. Lehigh, and now it's just Mr. Training Camp. He was the guy in OTAs and mini camp in training camp that people looked at and said, "Oh, this guy, they're really high on Zach McPherson." He comes in, he plays the backup corner role behind Steven Nelson, or he might even challenge Steven Nelson for the starter's role. And then as preseason went on, you started to realize he had a lot to learn about the NFL cornerback spot. And as the season went on, you realized you were okay. This kid just doesn't have it, not yet at least. But they were still high on him as an organization. So I don't know if they're just going to hand the starter reins to him. I know that we've gone through this in the past. A guy like Avonte Maddox has struggled in that starting cornerback role. He is without question a great nickel corner. But when it comes to being the guy on the outside, on the island, as we say, he has had his struggles. He'll be the first person to tell you that. I don't know if they go outside Zach McPherson. I think they're going to look for somebody to come in here, a veteran, maybe around training camp, to bring in as a corner. I think they will go and address that issue in the draft. Maybe that's somewhere they go in the first round. It's definitely a position of need in the first round. But if you're going between best player available and need, that's where Howie tends to make some mistakes. If you have a corner that is available there, if you do say have what's his name, Singletary, the Singletary Jr., if you have him come, Singletary. If you have him come out, he's still there on the board. Maybe that's a direction that you end up going. I know that is a position of need. I think most people realize it's a position of need. You need safeties on this team as well. There's a whole lot of need out there with this Eagles team, especially defensively speaking. It's going to be interesting to see how they balance that first round, though, between the need and the best player available. But I know that they still really like Zach McPherson. I've started to get away from him a little bit. We'll see how it works out because he's, a fourth-round pick? I don't think too many people are going to be looking at a corner going, oh, no, definitely. How do you give up on a fourth-round pick? But I know the Eagles really liked him last year, and hopefully that he didn't step out of favor too much with how he played last year.
Yeah, and the Eagles, with liking him early and then throughout the season, they signed a boatload of young corners. Like, we got that Vincent kid, we got the McCain kid, we still got McPherson on the roster, we got Tay Gowan, who's a guy that came out the draft from UCF, and I kind of liked him as a sleeper. Like, I thought you could probably get him between the 5th and 6th round, but then we ended up going McPherson in the 4th, so I kind of just said, well, we ain't going to do that,
Right.
But we got a multitude of young guys. I don't know if any of them are going to step up. I know Sirianni talked about that position, and with the boatload of guys, who's going to, as Howie would say, grab the bull by the horns. But you got guys out there like Alam and Booth Jr. and Clemson who will be around there probably that 19th pick. But if Howie doesn't package it up, it's different. I think, on the defensive side with corner, safety, defensive lineman, D-tackle, linebacker, you really can't go wrong. But if you do go best player available at 15, 16, whether it's the corner and a pass rusher, a D-tackle and a safety, whatever it is, I think it's really going to help out this Eagles defense, and I don't think we can go wrong. When you have that many holes, BPA is just do that because it's going to feel something. It's going to feel something.
By the way, Derek Stingley is who we're thinking of.
Stingley Jr.
Yeah, Stingley Jr. That's who we're thinking of. Yeah, the corner out of LSU. Yeah.
Because prior to the draft getting close, Stingley Jr. was the number one prospect. But over time, all these other guys come out and say, well, if you look at this, and if you look at his attitude, right? Sauce Gardner, Ahmad Garner out of Cincinnati has kind of climbed that board. He looks to possibly be the first one off. I still think that, Stingley Jr. has all the legit attributes, right? They did say, does he play hard? Does he practice hard? Is he a willing tackler? You don't want that on your resume because that can, translate to something bad, especially once you start paying a guy a bag. But
yeah,
I still like Stingley a lot, but I've grown on Sauce. But again, I don't think the Eagles move up to get any of these guys. I think the Eagles, if the Eagles would ever move up, it's for a pass rusher or something that they fell in love with. Ojabo was, rumored to be huge on the Eagles board. Let me ask you, if Ojabo's there in the second round, are you doing it? Would you personally, not Eagles wise, but would you personally do Ojabo in the second round after the Achilles? Sidney Jones 2.0?
Yeah, I know, right? Everyone, it's funny because you talk about corners, and already Sidney Jones is in my mind, thinking that's what I know. The injury, first round talent, top 15, top 10 pick even, and he's the steal of the draft and all that. I would do it because when you have a pick like that, it's almost a pick on layaway. Like it's a very Hinkie type of move, like a Sam Hinkie type of move where you draft somebody that has talent, but guess what? They can't help you yet. So your team won't be good, but your team will be better next year because you're essentially adding 2 first-rounders when you normally wouldn't be adding 2 first-rounders. And maybe if the Eagles do flip a pick, you're adding 3 first-rounders. At least the talent. Trust the process, right? I would do it because I do think he is top-tier talent. I would take that. If the Eagles employ that same philosophy like we talked about a second ago with Landon Dickerson, then I think the Eagles will be the team that makes that pick because their MO, their history has shown it. One time it absolutely burned them with Sidney Jones. The second time, I don't think it's burning them with Landon Dickerson. I think this time around, that's another pick that they would take a chance on to get that first-round talent in the second round.
Yeah, I agree.
First-round talent, top 10 talent.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, first thing that popped in my head when it happened, and I was being asked about it, is of course Sidney Jones. But Lightning don't normally strike twice at this, especially that bad, right? It's not supposed to, right? So I think you should be safe. And Landon Dickerson, corrected all doubt. And I was a guy who was kind of down on that pick. I never really get mad at offensive linemen, but when I'm like, dang, that many injuries. And then I saw, I was a big JOK fan, and I was a big Asante Samuel Jr. fan. And although they're doing great, Asante Samuel's for the Chargers looks good. And same with JOK for the Browns. I mean, Landon Dickerson was all we can ask for and more. So I ain't mad, even though they're doing good in their own positions. We stay true with the trenches. But it would be interesting to see how far he does drop, because you did just say, and he was starting to creep up to that top 10. The rumors were if the Eagles wanted him, they would have had to move up a little bit, 11-ish, 12. That gets very interesting. But this is the draft that's very important for the Philadelphia Eagles, just because where we sit with youth, veterans, and the cap going up, but decisions to be made by Jalen Hurts. Again, I'm a Jalen Hurts guy, but I'm not putting a pen to paper until it's time. And with him being a second round, this is the last year, right?
Yeah. Yes. And the 3, 4, yes. This is the other interesting thing, though, is that the Eagles, you just said it. This is a very important draft for the Eagles. The Eagles have made it that important by not going out and doing more in free agency. Like getting Pascal's great, White, fine, Reddick, phenomenal. But 3 guys. And I don't care about signing your own guys. Like, what they can do. Like that. The fact that even gets brought up is just ridiculous to me. It's like when somebody gets injured around the trade, or right, like a month before the trade deadline, team does well, then you get them back. And then a GM says, hey, it's like making an acquisition. No, it's not. You knew you were getting them. Stop it. It's so cheap. It's it's low-hanging fruit. But when it comes to this particular team in this Eagles offseason, even Howie Roseman, when he was addressing reporters with that beautiful backdrop of the Atlantic Ocean behind him, he was talking about how we're not going to add people in free agency that will eventually block rookies. That's basically what he said. And
Yeah,
in
he
a
did.
way, in a way, I get that strategy, but don't you want to know also that you've solidified a spot? You're still like, I'd rather go out and get something that I know I'm getting sometimes than rather go out there and roll the dice on a rookie. And them not doing more through trades or free agency has me a little bit worried, because now the Eagles have told you we're Reddick, White, and Pascal away from competing, like for a Super Bowl, and 3 first-round picks, whatever we decide to do with them. Like, that's what they're telling you. And I don't trust Howie and the draft to make that much of an impact in 1 year. And I know they said they're building, they're working on it, they're building, they're not all in, but that kind of got me worried. And Howie still has a 3-year contract now, 3-year contract extension. So, hey, even if I don't hit a home run in this draft, we got 3 years to develop them. Oh, it's 3 years to draft, 3 years to judge a draft. Well, good thing for me, I got a 3-year contract extension. So I'm not all in. I'm not all in with Howie, put it that way.
I hear you there. And I agree to a sense of if you feel that confident in the talent of these first round picks, but just because of getting a guy on a team, we know as Eagle fans, we've been pretty good in the Nick Sirianni regime with injuries, but you got to have depth on a football team. You don't just, come up with your starters and say, well, these guys are penciled in for 16, 17 games. So you never can go wrong with signing a position of need. You can't just say, oh, we're going to draft a rookie to solidify that. And I agree. I hear a lot of people talk about, and Howie Roseman said it, right? Like, oh, we weren't big in free agency, but we did sign left tackle Jordan Mailata, and we did, extend Josh Sweat and Avonte Maddox, and who was the other one?
Joshua, they brought back Fletcher Cox, Derek Barnett.
But no, it was Sweat from that draft. It was Mailata, Sweat, Maddox, and somebody in the chat let us know. It was 4 of them, right? Mailata, Sweat, Maddox.
They re-upped Dallas.
And Goddard.
Yeah, they re-upped Goddard. Okay,
So, but if you look at what they are to the cap this year, it's $14 million.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I think a lot of people who think like the Eagles are legit broke is like, well, these contracts, they're not really hitting this year. That's only $14 million to the cap, and we know by next year once the TV deals hit, it's going to be high. We do got to figure out what we're going to do at quarterback. That's going to take a nice chunk of change depending on who. I think if you get that C+, B+ quarterback, you can probably get away with that 25 to 35 million. But you see what the A quarterbacks go for nowadays. You gotta pay them. You gotta pay them.
Yes, you absolutely have to pay those guys. I don't know if the Eagles are going to hedge their bets. I think they do. I think that's actually a smart play. Like, even if, like I said, we're not giving Jalen Hurts a 10-year contract. So at least not right now. So if that's your philosophy, then you need to protect yourself somehow. And if next year is going to be a better quarterback class, as everyone's talking about, then you want to have 2 first-round picks at least to play with, so you have a little bit more currency than maybe the next guy does if you want to be able to move up in that draft if you're in position to be able to do that. So I think that's the play that Howie ends up making. Plus, I think it is an indictment when you talk about, to go back to the point again, the most important position in all of sports, quarterback. If you're not all in and you say that generally means that you don't have a quarterback that's good enough to mask the mistakes of other players on the field. That was the big thing of Carson Wentz in the latter stages of his career in Philadelphia, is that he wasn't good enough to mask the fact that the offensive line was breaking down. He was mobile enough to do it. He had a good enough head on his shoulders to do it. The problem was that the talent evaded him for whatever reason. You got to be the guy that is covering for the mistakes of other guys. You got to be the guy that whenever you're playing any particular team, like you do with the Chiefs or you do with the Patriots, or you did with the Patriots, you would do with the Buccaneers, you would do with the Seahawks. The X factor is, what type of Russell Wilson are you going to see? What type of Aaron Rodgers are you going to see? Those guys can cover the mistakes that a team is making. A guy like Jalen Hurts hasn't shown me that yet. And right now, Howie Roseman is looking at him saying, all right, here's another year. Let's see what you got. Even though the reports out there that they tried to get Russell Wilson, they were waiting in the weeds for Deshaun Watson. They had a Hail Mary of their own for Aaron Rodgers, but they're looking at Jalen Hurts right now saying, all right, we don't know if you're the guy. And because we don't know, they're probably going to hedge their bets and flip a pick the next year.
Yeah, and the chat is correct, and Hurts does have 2 years left.
2 years left.
Figure out. But here's the thing, free agency is free agency, and if it's your guy, like at the end of the day, the Eagles are known for getting the deal done. Look, we believe in Mulata, Maddox, Goddard, and Sweat. So we didn't let them touch free agency. We extended them in the right amount of time. So if Hurts performs and shows what he can do, you would think talks would be in the offseason of that. If you let, again, that's if he's legitly performed. What I'm saying is you don't have a quarterback that you love and let them run their contract out, whether it's a first year, 5th year option, or 4th year, 2nd round pick. The only person I ever see do that was Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. And then you see what happened to them, right? They had to franchise tag him and this. You don't let your quarterback run that last year without a deal. So Howie Roseman's always been get a guy who gets the deals done a little early, right? Try to save as much money as possible, right? Sure. You do it. We looked at that Carson Wentz deal was bad because he was playing like Carson Wentz. But when you look around the league, it's a discount, right? To compare to what the next quarterbacks got hit. So if Jalen Hurts is not the guy, you find out next year, you move on. If he is the guy, you're going to start negotiations, if he showed you that much. Now, if we can't hedge our bet, we find ourselves, Jalen Hurts takes us to the playoffs again, but we crap out. He answered some questions, but not all questions. But then you find yourself maybe allowing him to play that last year on his rookie deal out. But then you also run the risk of another team seeing it, believing it, and now you're playing the bidding game for a guy that, well, you only should bid high if you 100% believe in him. But you don't really do that thing because quarterback desperation is real, and there's always that GM or that coach that says, I could do this.
Sure.
So, as much as we don't believe, if that came to what it is, somebody else might. And so it's still a sticky game. If he's not good, we know. If he is good, you got to start talking to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I know how to use this guy. I know how to fix him. No problem. Like I was talking about the idiot test with Jonathan Gannon and Matt Rule with Hassan Reddick. The Washington Commanders, nobody was fixing Carson Wentz that wasn't Frank Reich. If Frank Reich isn't fixing them, got news for you there, Commanders. You ain't fixing them. And I love the fact, I can't remember their offensive coordinator's name. It's escaping me right now. I'm blanking. But I love that they signed Carson Wentz. They traded for Carson Wentz and then immediately gave their offensive coordinator a contract extension. My thought was he went into the office and was like, what? Wentz? I got to deal with that guy? You better give me a contract extension because I'm not going to be tied to this guy. And then all of a sudden I'm out on the streets in a year. But I thought that was hilarious. But that's the arrogance of the NFL when you talk about quarterback desperation. No. I can fix this guy. You're absolutely right.
Correct. But like I said, we started this conversation about Hurts. We got through the draft, offense, defense, talked about the coaching staff. I guess we're going to finish a little bit Hurts. If you had to just guess for 2022, is Jalen Hurts going to be the same, worse, or better?
Oh, better. I think he's going to be better. And the reason I go to better is because of the work ethic and the mindset. And the fact that he's working with one of the best throwing coaches you could work with. If you would have said to me, what does Jalen Hurts need to do in the offseason? I'm like, get with Tom House. Hang out. Learn to throw. Accuracy is what you need. I look at Jalen Hurts in a lot of ways. And I'll give you another. This might come off as a piping hot take, but I don't think it is. Nick Foles, for me, did not have some incredible arm strength. That was mine. Oh my God, that's incredible. Look how hard he throws that football. No, he threw pillows, but he threw them on point. When he was on, there was no more accurate quarterback than Nick Foles, but he didn't sling it. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't some gunslinger. Even the throws he made in the Super Bowl weren't on a rope. You know what I'm saying? You can live in this league by just being accurate. You don't have to have a mammoth arm. So that's why I look at Jalen Hurts and I say, that's not the problem. The problem is accuracy. The problem, as you said, diagnosing what's in front of him, stepping up in the pocket, hanging in there, extending plays. He can do that with his athleticism. But if he's not hitting those guys accurately, then all bets are off. I think his offseason workout, I think his offseason regimen, the fact that he is in such close contact with Nick Sirianni, as Nick Sirianni said yesterday at the owners' meetings. Remember, that wasn't the case with Carson Wentz. They didn't know what his offseason regimen was. Everybody's on the same page here. That means that when Jalen Hurts shows up at training camp and is trying to use what he learned in the offseason, Nick Sirianni is going to be right there knowing what he was already taught, knowing Shane Steichen's already going to know what he was doing in the offseason so they can continue to build off of that. If Tom Brady is willing to work with a guy like Tom House and Jalen Hurts then says, hey, I want to work with that guy too, then I doubt any coaching staff in the NFL, well, the exception maybe of Washington because they're just stupid. But the Eagles, I don't think, are arrogant enough to get in the way. I don't think Nick Sirianni is arrogant enough to get in the way, or Shane Steichen arrogant enough to get in the way of the development of Jalen Hurts, if that's what he's willing to do in the offseason. I think they're willing to build on that. So if you're asking me if Jalen Hurts is going to improve, yes, I think Jalen Hurts is going to improve. If you're asking me, Jalen Hurts, is he going to improve to the point where he makes a Pro Bowl, leads this team to the playoffs, gets a playoff win, and he's one of the number one reasons why they do that? That's what I'm unsure of, and that's why I'm not giving him that 10-year contract right now to be the franchise guy for the foreseeable future.
Hey, I agree. I couldn't have said it better myself. I do believe that, he has the work ethic to do all what you said. And when you just look at the fact that, he's going to be an assistant for the second time. He hasn't had that his whole career, even in college. Same OC, same head coach. The plan's going to be installed. He's working with one of the best. He's being gave the key to succeed just by the planning and everything. I know Eagle fans say, we're not getting him that receiver. We're not helping him with weapons. I think the weapon is, the offensive line, a run game behind them, and then just more time. Dallas Goedert wasn't the man last year, like you said, for the whole season, and they started to get a rapport at the end. I just think that it wouldn't hurt drafting a wide receiver that pans out or this, that, and the third. But I do think that, you are going to learn a lot, right? This is literally year 3. You can call it year 2 of starting. But
right.
In year 3, you should start to see who this guy's going to be. I'm not saying he has to be like what is this year is going to be in forever, but you'll start to get a sense of how he's going to be as a quarterback. And I think this is the biggest year. And, I'm going to be critical, but I'm going to be rooting him all the way. And I do believe, you know what I mean, that he should be able to get the job done, hopefully.
How do you not root for him? Like, I'm going to tell you, I love Jalen Hurts. Like, I want that guy's mindset in every athlete. Like every single athlete, anybody that comes through the city, I want you to have a Jalen Hurts-like mindset. Like, hey, whatever happens around me, the hell with it. I'm just going to work on whatever it is I can work on and control what I can control. How do you not root for that guy? I'm rooting for him as far as the future franchise guy. I'm not betting on him just yet, but I'm certainly rooting for him.
Yep. Hey, with that being said, we read around an hour. Appreciate you for hanging in this whole time. Shout out to the 230 some people still in the chat. Listen, hit that like.
Oh, what's up?
It's free. It's easy. Don't cost a thing. Subscribe if you are new, and definitely go check out the Farzy show on YouTube. Just tell them about, your schedule and what you do. And of course, for the new people just jumping in, who you got on for tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow morning, we're going to be joined by Milton Williams. I say tomorrow morning because most of my career has been in the AM. So that's where my audience is. So every day, 6 a.m., I do a live web show podcast, and it's across all social media platforms. I'm not on Parler, and I'm not on OnlyFans, but not yet. So that's the only two. But yeah, so you guys can check me out on YouTube. That's where we have our the visual portion of the show. But across all social media platforms, we do a live show. Every day, a new live show drops at 6 a.m. It goes about an hour, sometimes a little bit more. And that's where you guys can consume the content at the Farzy show on YouTube.
Yep, definitely subscribe. Milton Williams got some good stuff to say for
he's a party, man. Yeah, he's a party.
With that being said, you got anything you want to say anymore before we get up out of here?
No, thanks to everybody in the chat. You guys are awesome. Mike, always appreciate your stuff. You do a great job on your show, my friend. It was good to kick it with you for a little bit.
No problem, no problem. Until next time, y'all know what time it is. We out. Peace.